Welcome to Jurassic Park. That line changed my life because Jurassic Park wasn't just the first movie I saw in a cinema. It was the big bang of my cinematic universe, the moment when a darkened room, a giant screen, and the roar of a T-Rex awakened something deep in me. Wonder, fear, awe, love. This film is my origin story, my first love, my movie milestone, the reason I get excited about storytelling, spectacle, and Spielbergian magic. So today, dear listeners, you're not just guests, you're VIPs. Welcome to my park. I am your host, Michael Wilson. Think of me as your podcast, John Hammond, minus the amber cane and hopefully fewer lawsuits. And like any good expedition into Spielberg's dino masterpiece, I'm not alone. Almost, but not quite, because we had a few guests lined up. There was a few people who would agreed to come with us, and they all abandoned us faster than a lawyer getting a trip to the bathroom when he should be protecting some children. So, as it is, I'm left with my loyal co-host and the Dr. Ellie Sattler to my slightly deluded billionaire, the one and only DK. Hello, buddy.
Hiya, fella. I was going to say that's how these podcasts usually start. They're all ooh and ah, but then later there's running and screaming and dropping out.
Exactly. That's the lost world, but I'll let you have the reference. Yeah. So, thanks for joining me in the research tent or the park, whichever I'm talking about.
No worries, mate. Spared no expense.
Nice. So today together, we're diving claw first into a film that changed the game, not just for blockbusters, but for us. I think I can safely say we'll talk heart-stopping thrills, spine-tingling sound design, and the kind of movie magic that never goes extinct. And yes, there'll probably be a fair few puns along those lines as well. So whether you're here for the philosophical chaos theory or you just came to watch a T-Rex eat the lawyer, you're in the right place. Coming up, we'll explore the legacy of the film, our personal connections, favourite moments, and maybe even question why they thought opening a dino zoo with no seatbelts was a good idea. But first, to tell us how the bones were dug up, the magic was made, and just how Spielberg brought dinosaurs back to life, DK, I've tasked you with it again this week, so are you ready to take us behind the scenes?
Yeah, sure. I'll just let you know there is so, as you know, there's so much BTS stuff for this. So anyone who's even a small fan of the movie may know we could base an entire show just around the making of this alone. I will endeavour to drop bits here and there though. But just to make you aware, dear listeners, if you've got the time, I'd also recommend you check out Mike and I's interview with actress and stunt person Patricia Talman. As well as giving plenty of details on her other projects, Patricia was kind enough to share with us some behind-the-scenes stuff working on this movie as the stand-in for Laura Dern, amongst other things. So if you want to check that out, and I do highly recommend it. It's an extremely funny interview. Check out the link. You're all right to put that in the description, yeah, Mike?
Oh, yeah, definitely, for sure. Yeah,
cool. So yeah, I've got a couple of things here, and then as we progress through the various categories of topics of discussion, I'll spit some more facts at you. So yeah, Spielberg, when this came up, he was very early in the stages of pre-production on the movie ER, which was based on the Michael Crichton novel. When he heard about Jurassic Park, he subsequently dumped what he was going to do with regards to the ER movie, so went on to make Jurassic Park. Afterwards, returning to ER and helping develop it into the TV series that I presume many of us know. He delayed the beginning of filming by several weeks to get the cast he wanted. First, he allowed Sir Richard Attenborough to finish post-production on Chaplin before committing to this movie. He also waited until Sir Sam Neill could finish filming Family Pictures. Neill ended up only having a weekend off between finishing that movie and starting this one. Now, during the scenes with the T-Rex, Spielberg would roar like one through the megaphone. The cast cracked up whenever he did that, with Sam Neill stating, "That was kind of more funny than anything, and the acting part was not laughing. It's not easy." Now, the film grossed $47 million domestically in its opening weekend. At that point, that was the biggest opening weekend gross in history, breaking the previous record set by Batman Returns. It broke opening weekend records in several other countries as well. Screenwriter David Cope recalled the day it opened. "I was in New York and I walked into the Ziegfeld Theatre to see how it was doing. The guy comes out and announces to the big line, 'Ladies and gentlemen, the 7 o'clock show of Jurassic Park is sold out.' And people go, 'Oh.' And he goes, 'Also, the 10 o'clock show is sold out.' And they went, 'Oh.' And also, Saturday night 7 and 10 o'clock shows are also sold out. And I was like, I'm not an expert, but I think this is doing very good. Now, interest in paleontology waned during the Atomic Age and Space Race, but according to Dr. Nate Smith of the Natural History Museum's Dinosaur Institute, Jurassic Park coming out generated a bunch of interest among young people that wanted to become paleontologists and get into the field. As a result, numerous new dinosaur species have been discovered since then at roughly the rate of 50 new discoveries per year, or about one per week. So yeah, not only has it had a big impact on you, Mike, but it's had an impact on quite a few people.
Yeah.
So that's what I've got for the BTS stuff so far. But as I say, I'll drop some more in as we go.
Cool. And I don't have anything specific, but I have sort of personal stuff and stuff that I can vaguely remember from years of kind of knowing and loving this movie and studying the BTS on the kind of various releases and books and things that I own and stuff. So I'll probably get into that. And I've kind of explained what the film means to me. I will also share a bunch of pictures of some of the merch that I've got that I own, which I'm currently cycling between as my profile pictures, but I will put up as well because I think it's establishing my credentials as being a bit of a fan. You'll see I've got masses of stuff. Yeah, safe to say I've kind of been obsessed with this movie, and it all started somewhere. So as we often do, I wanted to basically begin this journey into the park by explaining how it began for me, and then asking you the same question, obviously, DK, as we always do, kind of first experiences. So yeah, as I've alluded to, my first experience was when the film was released. I was 11 years old. It was 1993. And it was a cultural juggernaut. So it was making news even before it was released, just because of the buzz around it. I can remember specifically. And I'm not talking like entertainment news and stuff. I mean, like literally the actual news. We're reporting about like this film that was selling out, as you said, theaters and stuff in just pre-sales and tickets, and it was expected to be the hugest thing. You know, Spielberg had obviously been bigging it up. He was developing and debuting new effects based on a popular novel that had existed for a while. So yeah, I remember my parents had obviously fallen for this kind of, I don't know if you would call it advertising or hype, because it just seems like it became its own kind of, it snowballed into its own thing. But for whatever reason, they booked cinema tickets. We'd never been to the cinema before. I'd seen movies obviously on video and stuff when I was younger, but I'd never actually been to the cinema. I know, I was 11. It's shocking.
Terrible. Wow. This was your first actual cinema movie.
So this was literally the first film I ever saw in the cinema. So when I say it was literally the one responsible for my love of movies, I mean, I can literally put it down as the entry point, as the Big Bang Theory, you know, of the, I can remember vividly where I was. I can't remember, you know, the first time I did a lot of things or various important milestones, but I can remember sitting in Blythe, or triple screens when the screen went dark and the logo came up and you had the, you know, it starts with the raptor attack on the guy and then all the various other scenes. I remember my sister running out, quote unquote, to the toilet when the T-Rex attacked before it ate the lawyer, because it was clearly just too much for her, bless her. And yeah, I have so many stories about it. One of the other ones being that we still kind of discuss this as a family when we get together and stuff, or if films come up, because we had the world's most annoying kid about 2 rows in front of us at the cinema, who obviously, like I said, you know, people had publicized this film and you knew what to expect. And so every 2 minutes, no matter what happened on screen, this little, must have been like 7 or 8 year old kid would just go, "Oh, is that a dinosaur? Is that a dinosaur?" Is that and the one that I can vividly remember, because I really wanted to scream, was when they lower the cow into the raptor pen.
Oh yeah.
and this kid just goes, "Is that a dinosaur?" And I was like, I keep saying to my parents, I know I was only 11, but I was so close to just getting up and going, "No, it's a freaking cow, clearly." Joining us in the research tent today, a lady whose cinematic takes are anything but extinct, someone with enough presence and elegance to stare down a raptor, our resident queen of analysis and nuance, Lady Vean. Welcome. And you would respond, but not.
It's going well.
So going back to where we were, I was talking about my first experiences with Jurassic Park. So yeah, as I said to you, DK, it's very much my movie day one kind of thing. I don't know how else you can put it. And it's always had a special place in my heart because it is the first thing I saw on the big screen, and it was the moment I kind of that it did awaken something, and I was like, this is something I love. I want to study this. It's what led to me doing a film studies, an English and film studies degree. It's what led to this podcast existing. It's what led to me having a massive film collection, and it all started here, more or less. I mean, like I said, I'd seen other films, but this was the first time I'd seen one in a cinema on the big screen. And I mean, what a film to pick! It's very special to me. Spoiler alert, in case anybody was expecting me to talk about it being overrated or terrible, that's probably not what you're going to hear. So yeah, moving to you then, DK. Can you remember what your first experiences were as vividly as I can?
Not as vividly as you can, no. I do remember the buzz, as you mentioned, because at that point, obviously, we were in the same country, so we'll have been seeing similar kind of features on the... similar kind of features on the news and stuff like that. Yeah, I do recall it generating that buzz and thinking, yeah, it kind of looks all right. Because if I remember the clips that they used, they had like an embargo on them on the news, so that although they showed clips from the movie, they weren't allowed to show any of the dinosaur effects.
Right. Okay.
So you would get them in the Jeep going out to the field when they first get to the park, but you wouldn't see then the establishing shot of the dinosaur. So yeah, I was intrigued. I used to go to the cinema a lot. I'd been going to the cinema for a number of years at that point, and I thought, I'll give this a go. It looks all right, and yeah, you are not prepared, even as a cinema goer. You're not prepared for something like this. I mean, I grew up with, the Doug McClure movies, the Harryhausen, which, don't get me wrong, I mean, they would always spark your imagination, like the Lost World and things such as that. But let's be fair, the dinosaur effects weren't that great. So. No. When I went to see Jurassic Park, I had an open mind because I thought, okay, this might look good, but it's not going to look great. I'll expect it to be a step up from what I'm used to, but and honestly, I was just blown away. It's one of those that really capture the imagination, and I remember so much dinosaur merch being around at that point, and over the years I've picked up a few. I've got the Jurassic Park collector set. I've got a couple of Funkos. I've got Alan Grant Hammond, and I've got that limited edition sexy Ian Malcolm.
I really want that.
yeah. So as soon as I saw that, I thought, I've got to have that one.
I can't blame you. I can't blame you at all.
Yeah, I did want the Ellie Sattler and the Jeep, but I just couldn't get it before it shot up in price. Yeah, it's one of those franchises that, I mean, let's be honest, its sequels haven't lived up to this one. I mean, sequels very rarely do, but while it's not reached the point of Highlander sequels, I think they're very hit or miss.
I think for me it's diminishing returns. I think they've gradually gotten worse every sequel for me, but
yeah, it's some of the extra content with regards to we were mentioning it prior to recording the animated series.
Mm-hmm.
Still enjoy that, but although they extend the continuity of the franchise, and I do like them, nothing. We keep trying to recapture that lightning in a bottle, and we're going to be doing it again this year with the new movie. But it's never going to compare to this. Seeing this at the first time in a cinema.
No, and I put it onto our Facebook page. If people probably saw it, that yes, I saw the trailer and I'm immediately fool me a sixth time Jurassic Park. Why not? I go into every one of these thinking this will be the one. Surely this is going to be the one that's not completely rubbish and worse than the last one. And I'll be doing it again in a couple of days when the new one comes out, hoping for the best. But that's just the eternal optimist in me, I guess.
If it actually, if it's actually based around dinosaurs and not big focusts, it'll be a step up from the last one.
Well, you said
Mike, I have to interject here because I learned a great phrase from the amazing Kate Mulgrew that I think applies here. And it's called Hope Springs Eternal. That film's gonna suck, Mike.
I mean, obviously my logical brain knows it, but as I've explained, this film Jurassic Park means so much to me that I'm just logic brain switches off and heart takes over, and it's just like it might be good, it might be okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say it won't stop any of us from going to the theater, and yet we know in our heart of hearts it's gonna be bad.
Yeah.
Look, I sat through 3 Michael Bay Transformers films at the cinema before I gave up. I can give Jurassic Park at least another one. You know? So yeah. Well, that brings us to you then, Vean. Brings us neatly over to ask, what were your kind of first impressions of Jurassic Park? Can you remember the first time that you saw it? And was it as important as it was for me?
Absolutely. Now, it was not my first time going to the movie theater. I'd been many times. We were big moviegoers. But I do remember going. It was in a shopping center called Janus, which doesn't have a movie theater anymore. Times are changing. And it was me, my brother, and my mom. And I already loved dinosaurs. I was 9, almost 10 years old, and I was enthralled from go. Like, from the start. I did not think it was a slow build. I was like, right from that first scene with Muldoon, then the shoot her and all that. I loved it. And I remember my mother trying to cover my eyes during the scene where Ellie is rebooting the system and the raptor jumps out from between the pipes. And I remember my mom trying to cover my eyes and me like knocking her hands away. Because I was like, I am not scared. This is fine. I love this. And not to be all back in my day, but back in '93 in Virginia, we had something called dollar theaters. So after a movie's been out for like a very long time, and before it, came out of theaters, but it had been out and other movies were kind of taking it down, these movies would go to what was called the dollar theater, and tickets were $1 no matter what. And it was these really greasy, dirty theaters, and the screens would have like tears and stuff on them. I went to see Jurassic Park 13 times by myself. Whoa. Just because I loved it so much. So it is definitely an all-time favorite for me. Even though as an adult I can look at it and have criticisms, I remember the scene where I recognized, at the time I thought, oh, this is what good directing is. Now as an adult, I know this is what good cinematography is. But I remember being so stricken by this shot where they first entered the visitor center and it pans up the T-Rex skeleton as sort of this foreboding, foreshadowing with that John Williams sort of the
oh yes.
So that all had a profound impact.
Yeah, I know what you mean. The way it pans to the banner of what was it? Sort of
social, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I'm kind of, just to quickly spring off something you said, I'm with you. I'm surprised when I watch this back that I was never bored, and I don't think it's a slow burn either, because it just seems like it does enough to keep you occupied and entertained. So as I watched it for this podcast, I was making a point of kind of like, let's see when these things happen, because in the course of my research, I read somewhere a dinosaur doesn't attack until after an hour into the movie. And it's true. And I was like, I have no recollection of that being the case. I recalled the big kind of T-Rex facing the explorers being like in the first half hour. In my mind, it happens way earlier than it actually does, because the film, it's very Spielberg. It keeps you interested. The characters are interesting. It's telling a story. It's doing it. It gives you a lot of moments of other kind of awe. It starts off with a kind of an attack that already gives you, gets you interested. And yeah, you care because the characters do. Like I said, when you think they're looking at nothing during that scene with the various Brachiosaurus and the other creatures, and they're just sheer like, oh wow, incredible, this is amazing. And it's like, this is acting, so I was right there with them. So yeah. And I think we all kind of were like that when we saw how good the effects were at that point. So yeah, very true. Although I will say as well, something else I wanted to mention, as I was talking about kind of, we were all hyped up to go because even the news were talking about the movie and stuff. I did have a momentary kind of wobble because, as is often the case, there's usually some kind of controversy that happens as well. And so I remember just before the film came out, when people were starting to see previews and stuff, it was coming out that like, oh, this film is too scary for children. It's far too scary. It's terrifying. The dinosaurs are too realistic and you're going to be scared and you should think twice before taking children. And we'd already booked our tickets and I was like, I was a very cowardly kid anyway, and I was like, Mom, Dad, maybe I shouldn't go. Maybe I should just stay here. I'm not sure I'm gonna like this. And then, as I said, it turned out to be, I absolutely loved it. I was there for every minute, and have never found it particularly, traumatizing or anything. Sorry, go ahead.
Did you read the book afterwards?
Yes, I did, and yes, I know it's way worse.
Gruesome. I mean, I read the book at 9. And I saw the movie, and then I was like, oh, I need to read the book. And I did. And I was like, wow, I still remember the scene in the book that's not in the movie where Nedry gets eviscerated by the Dilophosaurus, and he's blinded, and he realizes he's holding his intestines in his hands. That, I want to talk about something that sticks with you. But I am back at my house now, and I have our other guest here with me, Thomas Labanick, if you would like to introduce him.
Absolutely, yeah. Sorry that we kind of did a little bit of a mix-up with our timing, but now we have everyone present. So also joining our little expedition, please welcome a first-time guest, Vean's good friend. Is it Thomas or Tommy?
Thomas, but either one works.
Cool. Well, welcome, Thomas. Welcome to Jurassic Park, so to speak.
Yeah, looking forward to it. One of my favorite movies.
Awesome. I think we're all kind of in the same boat with that one. So, yeah, so it kind of makes sense for me to come to you then and to ask if you can remember the first time that you saw Jurassic Park and what kind of initial impression it had on you.
Just kind of the amazement of just watching these dinosaurs on the screen and feeling like that you could just go and, see these things in real life person, even though it's a movie and stuff, just the amazement of looking at these things and their existence.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So it was kind of the effects were what kind of won you over, and it was an incredible thing to see. Like I said, for me, it was the first time I'd been into a cinema and seen something on that big of a screen. So I think I was probably predisposed to love. Well, maybe not necessarily. Depends what I'd seen. If the first film I'd ever seen was something terrible, then probably not. But thankfully, it was this. So yeah. So the first impression that you guys got in both cases was probably just the dinosaurs and the effects, and you loved seeing that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was always the cool. Of course, and the intro, when you're looking at it and just looking into the fossils and stuff, because growing up, dinosaurs were always so cool to you as a kid, and then saying, oh look, there's fossils and stuff. You kind of remember some of that stuff as a kid when you're studying it a little bit, and then next thing you know, you're on this island where all these things are alive, and it's just wow.
Yeah, awesome, cool. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
You're like, oh yeah, that would work. That would totally work. We can make dinosaurs.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of. I don't want to get too much into it because it's a film and it's fiction and suspension of disbelief. But there's a lot of kind of scientific inaccuracies. For starters, the Dilophosaurus didn't have a frilly neck and didn't spit. But that's boring. So we just pretend it did. But yeah, there's a lot of. I do recall the central premise being kind of intriguing and not being the most outlandish thing in the world. And I can't remember who it was. I think it may have been Spielberg, it may have been Michael Crichton that was interviewed at the time of the film being released and said, this film isn't science fiction, it's science eventuality, because it's the kind of thing that we probably could imagine happening somewhere. And I think that's the other good thing about this, as well as being like a spectacle and whatever else. It really does ask questions about the nature of playing God and meddling with nature. And these are big questions when you're a kid, especially. So did you guys kind of pick up on that? Is it something that appealed to you as well, Vean and Thomas?
Well, that was the fun of Malcolm's character. Because he throwing that out at you is like, we're meddling in things we shouldn't be doing, and there's going to be consequences to that.
Yeah, and I think when I was a child, I was Team Hammond all the way. Like, let's do this. But as an adult, looking at, having worked with animals and worked in ecosystems and worked doing field research and studying population density and trends like that, it's like, no, Malcolm's right. And it's not, and the whole point was that this wasn't a man-made extinction, that it wasn't the fault of something we did that course correcting. It was meddling in natural history, which is just a no-no. You can't do that because you can't foresee what the consequences could be down the line. I mean, obviously you can with dinosaurs, like obviously there's going to be a big disaster, but like even if we brought back species that we would think today are fairly innocuous, we don't know what the ecological impact could be on modern an ecosystem. So it's a really interesting area to get into.
Yeah, and it does touch on that because, I mean, you do have briefly Ellie saying, you've got plants here that are poisonous that you picked because they look good. But, it's dumb. Why would you do that? And I do like you said, I mean, the book, I remember being virtually impenetrable the way it talks about chaos theory and gets into all the mathematics behind it. And I think I gave up in the end and was just like, I don't get this. But I love the way the film explains it in simplistic terms that even as an 11-year-old, I understood what Malcolm was talking about and the way that he talks about life finding a way. And then the script makes it really literal and clever in the way it's like, well, it's got frog DNA and some frogs have been able to change sexes. And so naturally, these creatures have started breeding. And turns out Malcolm's right, life finds a way. Is that something you appreciated, DK, when you taught for the first time, or is that something that went kind of over your head?
No, I really appreciate it. I love the kind of detail. I wasn't familiar with the novel when I went in to see this. So to see this, these, and there's a huge chunk of exposition at the start from Mr. DNA.
Yes,
which
cleverly done though by doing it that way. It's
in your blood, and it's done really well. But then later on, where they find the eggs, and Grant mentions the change in sex from one to the other. Oh, so woke. Then it's fascinating. It really is fascinating. I think it's one of those movies that it handles the exposition so well, and it does it in such a way that you come out of it fascinated and wanting to know more rather than get bored by it, if that makes sense. I mean, you're surrounded by these huge action set pieces, but the little stuff, the little scientific nuggets that they're dotted throughout the book, throughout the movie, they're just as interesting. It never lulls, I don't think.
No, and I mean, even as a kid, when I couldn't appreciate what kind of, I was there for the action and I wanted to see the dinosaur effects, and I didn't really know what a great acted scene was. But I know I loved that scene when they're having lunch, basically, in the visitor center, when it becomes like a roundtable discussion, which, Sattler chimes in and Grant chimes in, and Malcolm gets all the best lines, and it culminates with that great punchline about like, oh, and the only one on my side is the blood-sucking lawyer kind of thing. Yeah. So I remember thinking that was just a brilliant scene. Like I said, even as a child, I was like, that scene is brilliant. It gets across everything. It talks about the moral dilemmas here. Everybody's acting their ass off, and I was not bored at any point, even though there's nary a dinosaur in sight, maybe on some of the screens behind them, So I was like, this is just... That's the one thing I think that's missing in the other films in the franchise. They forget that there's more to this than just, oh, let's go from dinosaur attack to dinosaur attack, and it doesn't really matter. No, you've got to really have everything working, I think, in this film. For me, does it. It's acting, it's writing, it's direction, cinematography, as Vean already touched on, and it all comes together to make something for me just gorgeous, just brilliant. But yeah. So anyway, before we get on any further, because we've started talking about the writing without me necessarily intending to, but we will carry on with that. But first of all, I wanted to ask if you had any kind of BTS stuff related to the writing, DK, that you wanted to spout out.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. Like I said, it's the first thing on my list is the Mr. DNA cartoon was Spielberg's way of condensing much of the novel's exposition into a few minutes. Now, Vean touched upon it earlier. There is a whole subplot in the novel regarding Nedry and his reason for betraying the park. In the book, Nedry is not Hammond's employee, but subcontracted by him to create the park's security system. When Hammond cheats on Nedry's pay, Nedry tries to sue, but Hammond instead creates a smear campaign, making Nedry lose customers. In the end, he is forced to work for Hammond for a fraction of his pay. The company Nedry was selling the embryos was also trying to clone dinosaurs, but were obviously way behind InGen, so Nedry's move was sort of payback. In the end, the filmmakers decided not to include that plot since it would create sympathy for Nedry and his rather gruesome death, although not as gruesome as the novel. However, there are elements included in the script that hint at this, including Nedry's comment to Dodgson about Hammond's mistake of being cheap and his argument with Hammond over money. It makes Hammond's continued statement that he spared no expense ironic, or it may indicate that he spent money on flashier things park visitors would notice, but skimped on the more mundane but necessary equipment for actually running the park. Likewise, the guest's encounter with the sick Triceratops ends without any clear explanation as to why the animal is sick, whereas Crichton's original novel and the screenplay, however, they do include an explanation. The Triceratops lacked suitable teeth for grinding food, and so, like birds, would swallow rocks and use them as gizzard stones. In the digestive tract, these rocks would grind the food to aid in digestion. After 6 weeks, the rocks would become too smooth to be useful, and the animal would regurgitate them. When finding and eating new rocks to use, the animal would also swallow West Indian lilac berries. The fact that the berries and stones are regurgitated explains why Ellie never finds traces of them in the animal's excrement.
That whole big pile of shit.
Yes. Oh, sorry, I thought we were talking about Dominion again.
God, no. So is that what you have for the writing and stuff?
That's what I've got for the writing, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'd have a couple of very small things. First of all, I wasn't really aware of this until I started studying that Michael Crichton himself co-wrote the screenplay with David. I think you pronounced it Cope. I pronounce it Kep. Yeah. I'm not sure which one it is.
It's probably you, mate.
In any case, the novel apparently is much more cynical and scientific. As I said, the film really simplifies things for clarity. Several characters were merged, altered, or omitted. It's very weird because I do recall that Ian Malcolm dies in the novel, but yet does return for the Lost World novel. And Crichton's just like, hey, it wasn't as bad as I'd made it out. Shush. Just get away with that somehow. And that's random flashes in my memory. Like I can recall John Hammond dies in the book, spoiler alert, and it's because he gets his neck ripped apart by compies, the little things from the start of the Lost World, the tiny little dinosaurs. So, yeah, but no, I can't say I was ever sympathetic towards Nedry. And even before I started watching Seinfeld, Newman. So, yeah, and the other thing I have was just I've noted that David Cope, or Kep, is back for the first time since doing script work on The Lost World to write for Jurassic World Rebirth, which has included a scene of a T-Rex chasing a raft, which is part of the first Jurassic Park novel and has yet to make it into any of the movies. So, again, kind of excited for that, I won't lie, because it's just nice to know they're going back to the source after all this time. And again, maybe we'll get dinosaurs and not giant locusts, which would be good. So, yeah. So, yeah, before I carry on, then, is there anything, Vean and Thomas, that you wanted to bring up to kind of start the conversation with that you love about this film's writing and the kind of the plotting and the script?
I think the writing is obviously the best in the what we would now call a franchise. Unfortunately, they couldn't leave well enough alone. But I do think it's really well written. I do think there are moments that are exposition-y, but not in a way that's super obvious. And even if it is super obvious, it's not unpleasant. So it's still enjoy, like you said, the scene, that becomes the round table at the dinner party is very not enthralling, but very, you get very invested in the conversation that's happening, even though, again, this is a dinosaur action movie, popcorn movie kind of thing. But it's not entirely. And I do think it's interesting, having read the book and watched the film many, many times, that the book pulls absolutely no punches in what its position is on playing God and genetic experimentation and what can happen. And I think it's really interesting that they took Hammond, who was a pretty evil character in the book, and made him much more sympathetic. That he's played by the amazing Richard Attenborough, who I'm sure got notes from his brother, the great David Attenborough, for those who didn't know they were related. And
I knew. I'm British. We all know they're like royalty to us.
Yeah.
Not over here. A lot of people don't know they're related.
Wow. Okay.
Of course, is a hero of mine. So that was one of my points. I will say, no, we'll get to it later. But I do like that they made Hammond a more sympathetic character and put the whole debate in more of a question of which side you could fall on versus, Crichton's novel going, this is the position you should take, this is the position I have, and there's no debate about it.
Yeah, I'm pleased you said that, because it's one of the notes that I made, like I said, this time around, which I hadn't really been aware of. Even, like I said, the stuff that I know that I liked and stuff that went over my head. And this time around, I see what you're saying. Hammond is a very much more sympathetic kind of character, and it's largely because of his portrayal by Richard Attenborough, as you said. But also, as I was kind of researching it, I saw that, again, I think it was Crichton himself that said when they were discussing the film, they thought it would be much more interesting to make Hammond into basically a kind of a Walt Disney character, which they allude to in the dialogue and in the film script a lot of times. So it's kind of like he wants to be this great showman and this great revered, loved person. He's not playing God because he wants to have ultimate power or anything. He just wants to be loved. which I think is an interesting angle to have taken that in. And you do feel, especially like I said, little moments like when he's talking about the flea circus and says, this was my attempt to want to do that, to be as beloved as that, but not have it be something that was fake and have it be real, and just the absolute crestfallen nature when Ellie tells him, no, it's still the flea circus, man. The illusion is that you've got any control over this. And it just, it breaks your heart to watch it breaking his, I guess, in my...
Back here. I know we're talking about writing, but that scene has some of the best and worst acting in the movie, because Richard Attenborough is so good in that scene and delivering what you're just referencing. And Laura Dern, who is usually very good, when she wipes away that fake tear and goes, and that bugged me when I was 9 years old, and it bugs me. It is so bad in a movie that is so packed with good acting. I don't understand how that made it into the final cut.
Oh, I thought she was great. Not so much in that part, but I thought she was great in the scene when she's, when she says, I fell for it. I was overwhelmed by the power of this place, and now the people we love are out there. But I think it was more, I don't necessarily put it on Laura Dern so much as the script doesn't give her a punchline to that. It doesn't give her a good out. So as you said, she's basically just expected to go, and the people we love are out there and they're in trouble, so let's eat ice cream. Like this, there's really nothing you can do with that, is there? But yeah, it's not great, I suppose, that moment. Anyway, one of the things I wanted to bring up is, again, as I'm kind of watching and studying for what I could like about this movie compared to the others and etc. One of the things that I noted was that there's actually some really funny moments in this script for a script that's essentially like a disaster, almost, kind of a mild horror movie in the vein of Jaws and stuff. There's some genuinely really funny, whether it's like the Brachiosaurus sneezing on Lex, or Dr. Grant faking being electrocuted and the various responses from both Lex and Tim, or, the T-Rex finishes chasing during that really tense car chase with the Jeep, and Malcolm just goes, do you think they'll have that on the tour? It's just, so I have to go around and ask, is it something that you guys noticed and appreciated? And do you have a favorite kind of like joke or funny line that hit when you were younger or when you were watching the film? I'll start with you, Vean and Thomas.
Well, those jokes are necessary to break the tension. Like, I remember even as a 9-year-old being cognizant of those very deliberate moments of humor. And specifically for me, when Lex and Tim are in the Jeep that's being attacked by the T-Rex, and you have Grant he's just horrified watching it happen. And then you pan over to Malcolm, who's wiping the fog off the windshield so he can see. And I remember as a kid being, oh my God, I can't believe they did that in this moment. But as an adult looking at it, you're like, no, they need those moments of levity to break up the tension.
Obviously, a couple lines. And Malcolm has a few great lines. I mean, obviously, when they come up on the sick, was it the Triceratops? That's one big pile of shit. Just we use that at work sometimes. Also, the T-Rex, must go faster.
Yes.
Two, just beginning when Grant and Ellie are coming out to the park, and she's just going on and on and on and on. Grant stops her, grabs her head, turns it, and to look to see the dinosaurs. That's where you kind of get that first bit of amazement with the dinosaurs there, just to see what's unfolding above you. So I mean, there's some great moments in there of just some things to break it up, and then two, just some things to make you kind of, like I said, laugh and stuff, to just enjoy or break up parts where like you're generally fear or scared in some of these instances, and like, okay, that's kind of funny.
Yeah. Vean, I can't believe you wouldn't have appreciated the bit where they're being all pompous and talking about like, oh, God creates man creates dinosaurs, dinosaurs destroys man. And then Ellie just goes, dinosaurs eat man, woman inherits the earth.
No, fine. And I love it when they call her, she's tenacious. You have no
Yeah, or even like the little subtle moments like Hammond, like, oh, I should be the one to go to turn the power on because I'm and you're, and she's like, we'll talk about sexism in survival situations later. Right now, just guide me through this. So I'm like, okay. I remember really having a bit of a kind of a crush on Laura Dern as Ellie Sattler when I was younger.
Oh, absolutely. Who wouldn't?
Yeah. Also, I'm pleased it wasn't just me. And again, like you said, just character moments that give you the humor, like Malcolm talking about, I've been married several times. I'm always on the lookout for the future ex Mrs. Malcolm. But yeah. It's such a good line. DK, though, I don't want to. I should probably shut up because I'm probably mentioning all the ones you were going to say. But is there anything that kind of stands out from you, particularly in terms of the kind of the tension alleviating humor and stuff in the movie?
Well, you've already taken my favorite line, you bitch. I'm gonna go with that. Where it's excuse me, Hammond talking to Malcolm, and he says every theme park has its problems. When Disney opened, it was beset with problems, and Malcolm saying, "Yeah, but when the Pirates of the Caribbean's break down, they don't eat the tourists."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's just so good, isn't it? But yeah. And there are a couple of things I wanted to mention. Again, I should have mentioned this sooner, but they're in my notes and they were just lost in the weeds. First of all, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but there's a moment when they're in the helicopter, which always eluded me about its significance. I always thought it was just to kind of make Dr. Grant look silly kind of thing, where he tries to fasten the seatbelt and the seatbelt doesn't fasten. And the reason is because it's got two what you call female ends. And that's like literally foreshadowing the plot of the movie, because it's female and female, but he makes it work and finds a way. And when I found that out and that was intentional, my mind was blown. Is that something that's ever occurred to anyone, or is this news to you guys?
No, I love that they did that. I also that that thread about that, and I just thought that was such a cool bit of foreshadowing.
Yeah, I mean, I would never have picked up on it, but when you know it, it's like, that is great, genius script writing. Did you pick that up, DK, or is this the first you're hearing?
I didn't actually pick that up, but I'm terrible with signals, so.
Yeah, I'm usually the same. If I hadn't read that, I don't think I would have. The only other thing that I wanted to, sorry, go ahead.
Hold on. There is a problem with that.
Okay.
That means leaving Ellie with the two man bits, and that always bugs me because I'm like, oh, so she just doesn't get a seatbelt because you don't know how to put on a seatbelt, Dr. Grant? Shouldn't you know
Didn't
how
she
to
put hers on? I thought she had hers on, doesn't she, at the time?
But he has the part she needs.
Oh, I thought it was just I don't know. I just assumed it was a helicopter malfunction or something. But okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's a bit sexist, I suppose. Okay. The only other thing I wanted to mention was, and it's kind of, sadly, it's become a bit too common in the franchise, but basically, the filmmakers were aware after a while how popular Rexy, as she's now become known, the T-Rex was going to be. And the film was not intended to end with the T-Rex appearing at all, but they realized how popular she was, and she was basically the star of the show de facto. So they rewrote the ending that, it's her that busts in and gets a final bow and a glorious hero moment killing the raptors. Which again, when I heard that, I was like, wow, that's, you guys knew your stuff, because you were right. She kind of is the star of the show, I think, when you look at it. And I think we needed that moment. I think, I like it anyway. Did you guys feel the same way?
100%.
Yeah. DK?
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know what I was expecting there. One of you guys to disagree.
Nah, that sucks.
Nah, I don't like that bit.
No, we needed some giant locusts.
We never need giant freaking locusts, man. Okay. So yeah, the very last thing that I want to mention about the writing is it's a very Spielbergian thing, but it's so clever to, particularly somebody that was watching this as a child, to introduce the child angle. And I'm not just talking about, the idea that it gives Dr. Grant an actual through line and some genuine character development and something to do, which I lament so much films that don't have their characters change at any point, because that is what storytelling is. And I love that Grant literally is not the same person at the end. He's embraced children. He's got these kids sleeping on his lap kind of thing. And I love that. But also because seeing these things through the eyes of a child, when there's a child on screen to represent you, is so much more impactful. And I think it makes that, that scene of the T-Rex attacking the Jeep just so much more visceral, particularly when I first saw this. Now, it's hard to say if this was just intentional or just because I was a kid, but is it something that you guys picked up on? Or again, is it just something that you think Spielberg does a lot of? It's always got to have a kind of family angle and kids involved, whether it's E.T. or whatever. Vean, I'll ask you first.
I think it's a little of column A, a little of column B. I don't find Lex and Tim to be the most exciting, interesting characters. I didn't necessarily like it from a children's standpoint, which is interesting because I love film that is made for children. When I had aspirations of being a director, I wanted to make children's films. But in this case, I do think it was necessary, and I appreciate it from a storytelling standpoint. It's not my favorite aspect of the film.
Okay, fair enough. I think it's just for me. I think it helps to sell the childlike wonder because you've actually got children there, and so it makes it a bit more palatable. How about you, DK?
Yeah, I mean, by this point, Spielberg had been kind of established as, I wouldn't say exactly a children's film maker, but there was a kind of childlike element to a lot of his movies in that sense of awe and wonder. And I do think it helps with regards to this. And I thought Ariana Richards and Tim Mazzarello were really good in the role. So yeah, it does bring that kind of layer to it. I mean, it would be incredibly, I'm not going to say po-faced, but you'd have more of an Irwin Allen type thing with regards to the disaster and all the unfortunate incidents that occur. I think having those children there it does raise the stakes a little, and also gives it a kind of, I'm not going to say whimsy, but it does create that there's like a bit of magic there, especially when it comes to Tim and his obsession with dinosaurs and stuff like that. Yeah, it's introducing that child element, I think, works.
What about the scene where Lex is booting up the computer and they're holding the door and they can't get to the gun, and Tim is standing there not handing them the gun? It's like, give him the gun. Just give it. You're right there. You're banging on the back of a chair going, come on, Lex, come on. How about you make yourself useful in this situation?
Yeah, you little shit.
That never even occurred to me, but that says a lot about you, that you'd have been, if you were Lex, you'd have been like, Tim, you're not helping. Get the gun.
Look, I got this. Yeah. It's a Unix system. I know it.
Absolutely. I will say, as much as I kind of thought I had a crush on Laura Dern, being a child at the time, I think I had a much more sensible crush on Ariana Richards because she was, my age, basically. So that made a lot more sense when I was 11. And but even then, I kind of realized her being a computer hacker was very convenient and comes out of nowhere. And then when it actually becomes useful in that final act, I'm like, of course it does.
I do like the fact that she says, I'm a hacker. I'm a hacker. And, if you've known anybody, there is a hacker. They can't wait to tell you that shit. So it is true to life.
That's true. That's very true, actually, yeah. So, I mean, it works, but it's a little bit cheesy. It's the only thing that I think stands out as a little bit like, of course, this is a character trait that exists entirely because you need somebody good with computers. And by this point, you've killed off everyone else. So, what else can you do? Cool. So, yeah, moving on then to the direction, because, you don't want to be here all day. We happily could be. So, obviously, this is directed by Steven Spielberg, who is one of my favorite directors. Very much his signature style, the way he's a master of blending awe and terror, as you already hinted at, DK. For example, the first Brachiosaurus reveal and how glorious that scene is, now beautiful, and kind of brings a tear to my eye, versus the T-Rex attack and how it's just pure tension and real terror. Both of those are the same guy directing the same film, but couldn't be more different, and yet both brilliant in my eyes. Yeah. So is there a particular scene where Spielberg's touch shines for you guys? And do you think the direction, the way that it goes between kind of wonder and horror, do you think it works, or do you think it's a kind of a clash that doesn't quite work? DK, I'm going to come to you first because I haven't done that yet. So.
I think that the best scene for that, with regards, is the first reveal of the T-Rex. You've been anticipating it since it started. You get that little, the rumble. You get the rings of water. You get the kind of Tim with the goggles and stuff like that. It's all very, very Spielbergian. And then when you actually see the T-Rex and you're caught in your throat because it's so tense. And I think it transitions from one to the other really, really well. I think it's, with regards to does it pull it off, I think it's, in my opinion, I think for that juxtaposition between straight up horror, which a lot of this could be considered as such, and that Spielberg kind of ephemeral magic, I think this is probably his best movie for that.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I would probably obviously agree, but that would be, that's not going to surprise anybody. But no, one of the things I did note, and I kind of, to piggyback on what you were saying, I think having Tim put on those night vision goggles at that exact moment is a stroke of genius, because it really quickly puts you into their point of view. in a very visceral way that you wouldn't necessarily have if you were, even if the camera was showing their POV, you're so used to filmmaking being like that you'd just be like, it's still not quite real, it's a film. But by looking at it through that kind of distorted view of the night vision goggles, you're right there where Tim is. And it's, mere seconds before you just see the hint of a claw touching the non-electrified fence, and you immediately crap yourself if you're me and just go, oh shit, it's out. Yeah. And you get the, all of the other great moments of suspense, the goat leg hitting the roof, the T-Rex itself appearing and swallowing the goats, gradually the fence just whipping its way loose, and just so good. But anyway, enough about that. So what about you, Vean and Thomas? How did you feel about the Spielbergian, the mixture of awe and terror?
Oh, I mean, I'll be short and sweet to the point. It's just Spielberg is just amazing at what he does. I mean, I don't think there's anything I've watched of his that he just doesn't do it right. He does just an amazing job on all of these kind of things.
Yeah, I mean,
fair enough.
Craft, and he does have a very specific method of storytelling. And again, you talk about terror versus wonder. And I do think this is a good mix. And I do think you do have the initial, the segue, right? But I wouldn't say it segues entirely, because even later in the film, you still have those moments of awe. You still have the scene with where they see the Gallimimus, or
that scene, yeah.
Which then again transitions into, the terror of possibly being attacked by the T-Rex again. Or even early in the film, you're having the sense of awe and the sense of wonder when they're in the lab, and then they have that conversation with B.D. Wong. What's his Henry?
Dr. Wu, yeah.
Dr. Wu, thank you. And there are elements, especially if you start incorporating the score, where you are having those moments of dread at that point. So I think the interspersing of it is not completely clean cut. And I think, being the master of his craft, Spielberg does that very, very well. And I think just the scope and majesty of the film from start to finish, especially with the beautiful setting. Of course, they filmed it in Kauai, and just how absolutely overpowering just the setting itself is when combined with, the practical effects that hold up to this day. And if he had gone, because I've watched interviews with Spielberg where he talked about going full CGI even then, and how if he had made that choice, but he didn't.
Oh, we'll get into that when we talk about the effects, because I know a lot about that, because like I say, I've studied this just because I love the film, so I know way more than perhaps I should. Yeah.
Part of the directing, because as the director, it was choice. And had he made different choices as a director, we wouldn't have what we have now.
Definitely, yeah. No, you're not wrong. Absolutely true. But I have the script in front of me because I bought the official script book, and I wanted to make sure who to credit for this. But I have to say it because we were talking briefly about the T-Rex attack scene. I think it was a stroke of genius, whoever decided, and it turns out it is in the script, that the T-Rex scene would happen in the middle of a tropical storm at night, because it just makes it so much scarier. And I think the scene you mentioned kind of reinforces that, because for whatever reason, when the T-Rex busts through and starts eating Gallimimus, the herds that are running towards it, it's never quite as frightening. And I think it's because that's broad daylight, and, they're not supposed to necessarily feel the tension or the horror. They're going to kind of get out of it. And it's more about like, ooh, look at the T-Rex effect. It works. It's cool still. But yeah, the actual attack, because it is night and it's dark, it's all of the tropes of like, oh dear, this is a scary moment. Would you agree with that, DK?
Yeah, I think it. I do actually. I've not got anything really to add to that. Yeah. I'm with you on that. Enough.
Well, credit to Crichton and to Kep, or Cope, whatever how you pronounce it. Like I say, it is in the script that it's supposed to be a tropical storm and night has fallen, so I can't credit Spielberg with that. I was going to, because we're talking direction, but turned out it was already in the script. But yeah, and like you said, just there's stuff we could talk about all day, but just in terms of little moments, the way Spielberg, as you already said, builds up tension with little things like the rippling water or the dinosaurs not being seen but being heard. The way that physical space and blocking is used, and just clever little moments. Like, I absolutely love the moment where you think the raptor is going to finally get Lex in the kitchen, and it turns out it's been aiming full pelt at her reflection, which that's just brilliant. You know what I mean? Like, how could you possibly even think of that? And yet it's such a great moment of genius. And I think as you said, we'll talk about the effects, but the way Spielberg uses them, you can't really underestimate the importance of the way they're used. You know, they're not overdone. He uses a mixture of practical and CGI, and I think he uses the right one at the right time. And that's about it. And then, as I said, it's kind of the actors as well, but the way that Spielberg does make room for the human moments and directs those for me as well as the action. Like you said, how compelling is that scene? The round table of them having just a debate, and that's just people talking. You know, in any other movie that would be boring as shit, but you know, it's a Spielberg movie, so I really like that scene. So cool. Well, I'll move on to the acting as much as we need to, because we've kind of already said as much as we need to about that. But yeah, suffice to say, I think there's not a bad, for me, performance in this. There's not a weak link even among the supporting cast. And, you know, you forget sometimes Samuel L. Jackson's in this film, you know? Yeah. That's one of those things you hear and you're like, oh yeah, of course he is. But you don't really think about it. So even like the supporting cast, him and you know, Martin Ferrero as Gennaro the lawyer, you know, what's he called, Wayne Knight as Nedry, in the kind of, you know, the detestable villain pantomime hiss at him kind of role. And then, like you said, for child actors, I thought Joseph Mazzello and Ariana Richards were really good, because child actors often aren't. So there's not really much I can add, except, like I said, Laura Dern, Sam Neill, Jeff Goldblum. I think Goldblum, nobody necessarily expected it, but he kind of steals the show. But I think it's more because he gets the best lines. I mean, he's a great performer anyway, and you know, he almost is this kind of rock starry type character. It's his persona, but yeah, it's hard not to think he's kind of stolen the movie.
I remember an interview with Spielberg at the time, and they were asking him why these specific actors, and he said, "Well, they're fantastic actors, but they're always appearing in quiet movies, in like arty movies, and I wanted to give them something, you know, more akin to what I do." And I like that. I think that approach works, because at that point, Goldblum to an extent had been in, you know, more higher concept things like The Fly and Buckaroo Banzai. But
those are easy.
But when it came to, you know, things like Laura Dern, who I'd last seen in Wild at Heart, and, you know, you've got Sam Neill, who was, I believe, around about that time, I could be wrong, who's like in Until the End of the World. They were these very kind of, they weren't blockbusters, I'll put it that way. So it's nice to see good character actors in these positions.
There's nobody, when you think about it, like with the exception, obviously, of Richard Attenborough, who, even in his case, I think he probably was more well known for drama, Merchant Ivory type stuff, more so than, you know, blockbusters. And he was probably the biggest name on the call sheet. And again, if we're talking MVPs, Goldblum, yes, but also Attenborough, as Vean already said, surprising, like MVP of the emotional core of the movie.
Oh, he's brilliant in this. Absolutely.
Yeah,
brilliant.
he really is. And special shout out to Bob Peck as Muldoon, who again doesn't have a sizable role, but almost every line he gets is a gem, and part of that's the delivery. And I mean, we all know Clever Girl. We can't hear that without picturing him being savaged by a raptor. So yeah, so that's all I have to say about the acting. I'll be quiet now and let you guys talk. Go ahead, Vean. Sorry.
I say that Bob Peck is kind of the unsung hero of the acting team on this. You know, he was primarily a stage actor, and oftentimes Attenborough too, but Bob Peck was primarily a stage actor, and oftentimes when you're watching a film or a TV show, you can spot the stage actors because they have a very different method.
I did want to mention a couple of things about the acting, because they're moments that got me since childhood and still do. And it's got to be the performance that does it, because it cuts to my heart. And they're both from the kids, actually. The first one is where they keep saying, you know, turn the light off, because it's attracting the T-Rex. And it's just the way... It's not even a particularly great line, but it's the way Ariana Richards just really sympathetically just goes, I'm sorry. You genuinely feel really good for her, and like, oh, it's all right. I'm not mad. And then again, a little moment, but when Grant finally gets to Tim in the tree, and he's like, are you okay? And Tim just goes, I threw up. And you're like, oh.
I do like the line as well. We're back in the car again.
Yeah. Oh, or just Grant just going, look, Tim, I won't tell anybody you threw up. Just go back here. Like, nobody's going to blame you. Oh, dear. But yeah, I mean, Tim's just great for comedy value anyway. Like I said, I love the fact that, you know, they have the fake out of the electric fence, and Lex is like, that's not funny. And Tim just, that's excellent. the women that always made me laugh, which I forgot earlier, which is like, all right, I'm going to jump on the count of 3, 1, 2, and then he gets shot with the electric current that's just going back through the fence. They resurrect him, they finally give him CPR, and he comes back, he coughs like 10 minutes later and just goes, 3. Always made me laugh. Anyway, that's so that's about as much as we can say about the acting, I think. We know who Vean's MVP is, and I've given you mine. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to bring up, Thomas or DK?
I do have a line, a behind the scenes thing with regards to both Ariana Richards and Mazzello. Richards' audition consisted of standing in front of a camera and screaming wildly because Spielberg wanted to see how she could show fear. Richards remembered, I heard later on that Stephen had watched a few girls on tape that day, and I was the only one who ended up waking his sleeping wife off the couch, and she came running through the hallway to see if the kids were all right.
Nice.
Yeah, and Mazzello says, Stephen had me screen test with Robin Williams and Dustin Hoffman for Hook, but I was just too young for the role. And because of that, Stephen came up to me afterwards and said, don't worry about it, Joey. I'm going to get you in a movie this summer. It wasn't only a nice promise to get, but to have it be one of the biggest box office smashes of all time, that's a pretty good trade.
I think he made the right choice there. I know which one of the 2 films I'd rather be in. No
exactly.
Offense to him. So, yeah, cool. Awesome. Yeah. I can't remember what I was going to... Oh, yeah, that's what I was going to say. I don't know if you guys have seen this. I may try and find it to put in the edit, but Ariana Richards recently remounted the picture of that great Spielberg suspense moment when she's holding the Jello and the raptor starts moving behind her. She kind of recreated that picture, and it just looks so cool. Even though she looks entirely different now. Right?
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
Yeah, but, awesome.
Very cool.
Moving on to the VFX, then, as I say, I have a couple of things that I kind of noted over the years. I won't keep us too long, but one thing that I did want to mention is, as Vean kind of sort of led us to earlier, this film does have a lot of pioneering CGI, but it also still has a lot of old-fashioned techniques, including animatronics. And if you've never seen any behind-the-scenes footage from the T-Rex attack, please go and look it up, because there is a full-size animatronic T-Rex head right there, which I believe both child actors have said it wasn't hard to fake, quote-unquote, fake being scared when this gigantic T-Rex head was actually going to go.
When we do get to the production design, I've got a couple of behind-the-scenes stuff, and that relates to one of them.
Oh, did you want to go now before because this is kind of one thing. So good.
Apparently, it occasionally malfunctioned due to the rain.
That was my other note.
Kathleen Kennedy recalls the T-Rex went into the heebie-jeebies sometimes and scared the crap out of us. We'd be like eating lunch, and all of a sudden the T-Rex would come alive. At first, we didn't know what was happening, and then we realized it was the rain. You'd hear people starting to scream.
Yes, if you've never seen footage of it, it really is truly just chilling, because the rain would interfere with the servos and make it just kind of judder, and it did just look like this head was alive. And it's so weird. But yeah, you've got to look out for the behind the scenes footage. It's so just freaky.
I've got another one here if you want me to get that out of the way. The job of animating the dinosaurs was first given to Phil Tippett, who did several pre-visualizations with stop motion animation. Motion blur would then be digitally added to make the movement seem less jerky and more convincing, a process known as go motion, which Tippett previously utilized for the AT-ATs in The Empire Strikes Back and Ed 209 in RoboCop. However, ILM visual effects artist Steve Spaz Williams and Mark A.Z. Dipp suggested that most of the dinosaurs could be fully animated on computers, although their boss, Dennis Nedry, told them that they could never do a better job than Tippett. They created a test animation of a skeletal T-Rex anyway, which was shown to Kathleen Kennedy when she visited ILM. Kennedy informed Spielberg, who was intrigued and ordered another test reel. He was blown away by the final result, where a fully fleshed T-Rex walks through a desert. He and Tippett looked at each other, and Tippett said, "I think we're extinct." Spielberg liked the line and gave it to Jeff Goldblum to say to Sam Neill in the Visitors Center. Tippett later stated that he was genuinely physically sick from feeling obsolete and left the set for 10 days, but he was later hired to help design the computer-generated dinosaurs' movements.
I had that same note because I'd seen the behind-the-scenes featurettes and stuff about that. I knew that's where that line had come from, and yeah, Tippett was genuinely worried, but he still has a dinosaur movement consultant credit or something along those lines in the film, so... Yeah,
awesome. I do like, it says all of the cast were given a raptor model signed by Spielberg as a gift. Mm-hmm. Ariana Richards has it in her house to shock anyone coming in, like a guard at the gate. Jeff Goldblum's model has a prime spot in his house and is a cherished object. And Laura Dern put her raptor model in her son's room near his crib. When he was older and saw it, he screamed like never before. She had to put it in storage, but hopes one day the two will be friends.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, we've kind of talked about all of the effects. It's suffice to say, like I said, it was groundbreaking in its own way, in much the same way as other films we've talked about, like Terminator 2 and stuff, the way that CGI had developed to be able to do these things. And I've mentioned this before, I forget where, but I have to give a shout out to the moment which always wows me, which is when you get the scene of the computer script reflected on the raptor hide, because that must have been so difficult to animate. You know, there's so many different pieces to that, and it's such a minutiae kind of thing, but I just always loved that. I thought it was fantastic, and it just gives everything so much more life and more reality in three-dimensional space, I guess. So yeah, that's me. Again, I'll shut up and ask you guys if there's anything about the VFX that you guys know that you wanted to impart, or any kind of special moment or highlight that you wanted to mention before we get into actual favorite things. And again, Vean, are you back?
Yeah. I would say, I don't know if you guys know this about me. Maybe you do. They are dragging me into this century kicking and screaming. I am a big proponent of practical effects because practical effects are superior, and they had a bunch of masters working on this. And it wasn't just the head of the T-Rex. They had almost the entire body. I think it was everything but the legs. It went all the way down the tail and all. And yeah, was it a pain in the ass because it would rain? The skin would soak up the rainwater, and then they would have to wait hours for her to dry out because the weight would then impact the servos, and it couldn't. But yeah, you had to do that. Okay. But we look at it now, that is a real goddamn T-Rex on the screen. It's unbelievable. And it not only is it so incredible to watch as an audience, but it gives the performances credence because the actors have something to interact with. And I don't care how good of an actor you are. If you're imagining a T-Rex in front of you and there's nothing there but a tennis ball on a stick because they're going to CG it later, you're just not going to get the same quality of performance that you would get if you have that really impressive animatronic in front of you. You just not. And I love even stop motion, but even that wouldn't have worked for this. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen the tests for the stop motion of the raptors in the kitchen. Has anybody? Yeah. That? And they had the snakes. I'm like, what are you guys doing? This is idiotic. But no, it's so amazing. I love the practical effects of this, and I will die on that hill. What do you think, Tommy?
Well, far be it for me to dispute your opinion on all things great when it comes to practicality of stuff, because I think it does lend credence to, believability and stuff. Yeah, I mean, the effects are amazing, and like if you haven't watched on the Disney Plus the ILM series where they talk about and the evolution of the studio itself, but just all the stuff they do with the development of the movies, stuff like Jurassic Park, and just all that practicality of having models and things of those natures to create the effects that you're looking at. I mean, now we've got like AR walls and the volume for Disney, to help the actors in kind of, a lot of stuff, but it's so much more effective, I think, to have something in front of you as opposed to, like she said, like a tennis ball or something that's holding the position of what you think is there, but you can't really see it. So having something to react to is a lot better, I think, towards the performance.
Yeah, I have to kind of stick up a little bit for the CGI in this film just because somebody should. And I have to say, I think you're right that like rushed or bad CGI can be terrible. And I don't necessarily notice it as much in this film, even for 1993, which I think says a lot about how rushed and crunched modern kind of people that are using CGI are. But I think a lot of the stuff in this holds up. And if you look at, like I said, I never fail to get kind of teary-eyed in that moment when they first see the Brachiosaurus and the field full of animals. And that's completely CGI. There's nothing there. But I just find it incredible, But yeah, I mean, I don't think I'd have been happy if they'd went the whole way. And I do like that it's a mixture. But yeah, for me, there's a lot of really impressive CGI. And there's probably more stuff enhanced with CGI than you would necessarily know as well. But yeah, in terms of practical stuff, the T-Rex definitely is going to work a lot better.
In fairness to what you're saying, I do think this is a good use of CGI.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I do. I'm just saying, I think practical effects are superior, and I do think there is a time and a place for CGI. And as you're saying, the Brachiosaurus scene is one of them, and it does hold up in the sense that this is CGI from 1993, and you're, because of Spielberg's directing, you are so immersed in the moment. But now our over reliance on CGI is the problem, because this is an appropriate use of CGI versus what we. And I do get a little animated about that. So I didn't want to seem like I'm knocking the CGI in this movie, because I'm not.
No, and I think we'd all probably agree that, like I said, the problem, I think the biggest problem isn't necessarily the use of CGI. It's the fact that you get a release date within 6 months and then tell your CGI people you've got 4 months to render something. And, naturally you're going to get crap because that's physically not possible. I mean, this film was in development for a long time before they'd put something out, into the public. But yeah, there's bits that I like. But when we're talking about practical stuff, special shout out as well to the Triceratops, which was obviously a practical effect because they have to interact with it, and the way that it kind of breathes and moves, I think it looks lovely.
I think it's like Vean mentioned. You can tell that in these early, well, some of them. I mean, let's not go to the lower budget things, but in some of these pioneering CGI movies, where they were still relying heavily on practical effects, it looks so much better. And then you flicking channels and you stumble upon an asylum picture where they've got CGI dinosaurs, and it doesn't even compare. It doesn't
even the future films in this franchise, an awful lot of them look worse than this one.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's reached a point where they're just pushing them out as quickly as possible, and it suffers for it. But I mean, I can look at this, and it's starting to show its age a little. But I still think it looks a heck of a lot better than a lot of CG movies since.
I think I'm clearly just way too close to it because I don't think it's aged a day. But I think that's because I'm genuinely just in love with this movie, and I don't want anybody to criticize.
No. I will say every time I put it on, I keep steeling myself to think, oh, this is going to look bad. Because when you look at things like Alien 3, the original theatrical cut, and to some extent even the Fincher cut, you look at that and you think, holy crap, that's not aged well. And I'm not even going to go into shit like Spy Kids. But when you look at things like this, I mean, as I said, I go in and I think, oh, I'm going to see the texture lines and all that kind of stuff. And I genuinely don't. I don't know if it's my brain turning off the analysis part so I can just suspend disbelief. But it still looks really good to me.
Yeah, and I've remembered what. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just there's. I mean, there's that scene towards the end where they're crawling above the room, and Lex drops through that like kind of ceiling tile, and the fact that not only is it not Lex, it's just Ariana Richards' face superimposed on a stunt person's body, but then you've got the CG raptor jumping up. And it still looks phenomenal to me.
It's still tense as anything.
It is, and it's a very good scene on the 3D version.
I wouldn't know, but I was remembering what I was going to say, which was, get your drinks, Andy. I was going to mention that I have the 4K collection of the 6 Jurassic movies, and this is the first time I've watched this movie in 4K, so I can happily report that it looks fantastic in 4K resolution, and it really does hold up, and all the effects look better for me than before, which I was a little worried about because a while ago I was with a random friend of mine, I think it was Will actually, and we were watching The Lost World on my 4K set, and it's not an improvement on the Blu-ray at all. But yeah, the more modern ones I've watched clips of just to kind of check out the 4K, and I think the likes of Dominion and stuff, they look incredible. I mean, in terms of how the film looks, not necessarily the effects, but just the way the 4K looks. And I think that's because they're more modern films. And I was worried that it would just be a matter of the older ones wouldn't look that much more impressive. But for whatever reason, perhaps just because it's this movie, my word, it looks brilliant. So presumably they just didn't want to put as much effort into The Lost World, which I kind of can't blame them. But,
yeah.
But yeah, for whatever reason, this one looks amazing, I have to say. And like I say, I've owned it on every possible format now. I've had it on video, DVD, Blu-ray, and now 4K. So please stop bringing out new formats, or I'm going to have to buy this film again. So So yeah, fair enough. So the last thing we want to talk about then, before we talk about the audience responses, favorite things, conclusions, etc., would be the music and sound. Now, there's not a lot to say, but I don't want to underplay just how bloody brilliant and important John Williams' score is for this movie. I mean, it's John Williams, the guy who did Star Wars, Superman, every other Spielberg film, Jaws, Close Encounters. So he's not a slacker, and yet for me, this is up there potentially as his best score. It is definitely the most evocative and the most emotional. Yeah, go ahead, DK. You were saying.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the best. I think it does convey that sense of wonder and awe better than anything I could imagine. When I get disappointed at the score that Williams did for The Lost World, because it's the same motif used over and over and over and over. But throughout this, it's chef's kiss as soundtrack. It's one of the few. I mean, it's one of the few soundtracks that I still own a physical copy of, because I just love it. And apparently, he scored it toward the end of February '93 and recorded it a month later. He said he felt he needed to write pieces that would convey a sense of awe and fascination, given it dealt with the overwhelming happiness and excitement that would emerge from seeing live dinosaurs. And I think he just captures it brilliantly. You can hear the soundtrack on its own, and it evokes a sense of emotion.
Oh, completely. I mean, I have this, obviously not physically, but I have this on rotation on my kind of various musical devices. And whenever the Jurassic Park theme comes on, I'm right there, and I'm feeling every bit of that emotion. And I'll often get a little bit weepy as it plays out, just with memory, nostalgia, and everything that that the film music makes you feel. And I have a kind of a story about that, which I have to tell, even though my brother won't thank me for this, which is at the very end, the kind of the really melancholy version of the theme that plays. When we first watched this with my brother, when he was about maybe 5 or 6 years old, he started really crying at that music, just because the music is just so haunting and so emotional. So like every other time when we watched the film, he insisted that we turned it off before it got into the end music, because he would just be like, "No, I don't want to hear it. It's going to make me cry." So that's like, if that's not just a sign of how freaking powerfully emotional and how much that film score just penetrates to your soul, I don't know what is. So Vean and Tommy, any thoughts on that from you guys?
Yeah, John Williams, like all the other big Hollywood composers, definitely has a signature sound, which is present in this score. But I think this is one of his scores, unlike some of his others, that really runs the gamut. I mean, it really does everything it needs to do, from the main theme that evokes that majesty, that they're able to play in that melancholy way, as you're saying, that they're able to play in that big booming way when it's needed. But it also has several motifs that evoke all kinds of different emotions. So you have it evoking the majesty, and then you have a different theme that evokes kind of that sadness when Hammond is talking about the flea circus, versus the theme, during the first scene with the raptor getting transported, and, that big music, kind of during those moments. And then the moments of silence that are necessary. Like some moments of silence during the big T-Rex attack at night, where you don't necessarily need that score elevating the terror. So, when you need those moments. But also, I think there are times during this film that you don't have the big themes going, that you have these little like violin stings in just the right place that are in a scene that otherwise, like when they're in the lab with Dr. Wu, the music in that scene where you have these certain stings, they bring a tension that wouldn't be there without the music. It would just be a normal scene. But by adding that, it evokes that sense of dread that something is coming. So I do think this is really the merging of visual storytelling and audio storytelling in a way that's really perfect.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell Spielberg and Williams work well together. Obviously, at this point, it's their, second dozen's worth of collaborations, or something. I can't remember exactly, but it's close to that. So, yeah. How about you then, Tommy? What did you think about the music? Anything you wanted to add?
Not much, but I mean, just John Williams is just an amazing composer and artist in his own right, and just the music from this is just so good, and the emotional.
Iconic.
It is.
It's iconic. Yeah.
And the emotional cues it brings just from listening to it, even when we watch it, or like I've got the main theme of the music in one of my rolling playlists, and when that music comes on, you're just, it just hits just right.
I have a funny story. Can I tell a funny story?
Absolutely, anytime, go for it.
Because you guys know about me working with animals and how, dinosaurs evolved into birds. And I've been working for a couple of years. Actually, I just finished. They just moved away. But I've been working at an animal sanctuary that had a flock of turkeys, which are way bigger than you would think. And can be really aggressive. But we would move them at breakfast and dinner time from one paddock to another paddock. And I would be down at one paddock opening one gate and somebody'd be at the other one, and they would open the gate and the turkeys would run because, hey, it's time to eat. And you have these 2 foot tall birds that look like dinosaurs. And every time I would start singing the dun, 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 dun. Every single time, it would just make me think of that and laugh and just watch them go nuts. And then I would just sing them that song. So that became the turkey theme song as well.
Oh, bless you. I'll share my funny story that I already told DK earlier when we were waiting for you guys to come on, which is that this film is so ingrained in my consciousness that like stupid moments that have no real significance, but they're just in my brain of things that I spout every day. And I was saying to DK, the amount of times that I'm trying to load a loading screen on the computer and I'll just go to it. Come on, little one. Come on. Push. Just to try and get the screen to load up quicker, as if this is, as if I'm talking to a hatching raptor egg, just because this film is just ingrained in my subconscious. But yeah, often catch myself doing that and feel a little embarrassed. But I've just shared that with the world, or at least probably about 10 people that will listen to this podcast. But never mind. So yeah, with that out of the way, then I'm going to move us to our next section because we don't want to keep you guys too much longer and make it a bumble length up. So the next section would be basically the audience response. Now, in this section, I put out a post on social medias and stuff asking people what they thought of Jurassic Park. I don't know if it's just because this film is just generally so well regarded that people thought it was redundant, but for whatever reason, we did get not a lot of response. So I haven't got a whole lot to get through. And again, if you want to share your thoughts, by all means, find us on social media using our link tree, comment on our YouTube video or on Spotify, anywhere you get podcasts, because I'd love to hear more about people's experiences with this film that I love so much, unless, of course, you're going to savage it or anything. But you're entitled to your opinion, I suppose. But yeah, from the bits that we did get, though, I'll jump straight in and say on Blue Sky, Terry Long simply says the one word masterpiece. Fair enough. I didn't get Facebook group names this time. Apologies for that, guys, but I have got individual names. So from Facebook, Al Winter says 5-star movie for me. This and foreign movies like Troll Hunter show modern studio CGI up for the bloated, budget crippling folly that it is. Fair enough. Ron Godwin just simply leaves 5 stars. Patricia Dewar says 5 stars. It was in its time amazing. Dana McNair just says absolutely agreeing with that. Ray Kelly says, God tier movie. It was my first big movie as a kid. All the hype, the coupons in the newspapers, on the news constantly, as we were saying, DK. I saw it in the Metro Centre UCI. Wow, you live close to me. When it came out, the smell of popcorn still takes me back to that visit. And the raptors, while scientifically incorrect, are still among my fave on-screen creatures. And nothing beats the sound of that T-Rex roar the first time you heard it. Yeah, couldn't agree more with that. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I have one more, which is from our Instagram page, which is Bryce Trek, who gives it 5 stars and say the CGI and practical effects alone make it 5 stars. That being said, it's very different from the Crichton novel source material, which in some respects is a good thing because parts of that were low-key terrifying, as I think Vean and I have both touched on earlier. So, yeah, fair enough. I said not a lot of response. I expected a little bit more, but if you do have thoughts, feel free to share them. And we will here move on to what I always do on my kind of particular silver screen regulars and classics, which is to go around and ask everyone for their favorite character, moment, and line. And I'll start with you, Vean or Thomas, whichever one of you wants to go first. Do you want to give your favorite character, moment, and line from the movie?
I don't know. That is really hard because I really love Hammond, and I know he's not like an ideal, perfect person or anything, but I even now appreciate like what he was trying to do. I know they kind of retconned him in the future movies to be just a big old capitalist, and I know there was an aspect of that to his character, but I do think that he really, in the movie, not the novels, the motivation for what he was doing was pure, and I do think it blinded him to kind of the downside of everything, which he learned. And he dies in the novel. He with the compies, if I remember right. But
yeah, I did say that before you came on. I remembered that part from the novel. Yeah.
So, which they repurposed in the second movie and gave it to that asshole who gets eaten by them, which is great. But the moment where he has his where he turns around when they're loading onto the helicopter at the end of the movie, and he hears the dinosaur call, and he has to give up this thing he's passionate about because he understands it was wrong, but how it's breaking his heart. And I really love Hammond. But that being said, I think Grant is way up there on my list. I love Grant. I loved Muldoon. I love the clever girl.
Now, V, you can't just list every character and add dinosaur in the movie.
Okay, the clever girl. Then she's probably my favorite because I.
What, the raptor?
Yeah,
Okay.
I her and I love her.
It comes actually so.
Yeah.
Because she is
like you, she's beautiful but deadly. Is basically what you're saying.
That's right. She had the others testing the fences. She took over the prize. That's right. She took the prize. So but those are my top ones. It's hard for me to choose a favorite. It's hard for me to choose a favorite line. I really do like when Hammond's talking about, I can see the fleas, Mommy, can't you see the fleas, and all that. I just think his performance is so fantastic. He's probably near the top of my favorite characters, and those lines are, I think, some of my favorite lines. Are they super iconic? No, but I think they're very powerful.
You'll be pleasantly surprised when I reach giving my favorite things, I think. But did you have a favorite moment before we ask Thomas for his answers?
Just the T-Rex attack scene is pretty, beat that. I mean, that scene is so great. But yeah, and Rexy's big hero moment at the end, where when dinosaurs ruled the earth, falls with her her roar. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
What's your favorite, Tommy?
That's kind of hard to say. Like I said, I enjoy and love most all these characters. So to say I have a favorite, I mean Hammond, I really enjoy, but Grant and Ellie, and of course Malcolm. And I can't really choose one top one, but one of my favorite points of the movie, because I do happen to be a big T-Rex fan, is when they go, Hammond goes, "Well, we clocked the T-Rex at 32 miles an hour." She looks, T-Rex. You said you have a T-Rex. Grant goes, "Say again." He goes, "We have a T-Rex." So but I think probably my favorite moment is, and it's been talked a few times already in this, is that just initial moment when they drive out there. And of course, that's where you get that music swell too, for the first introductions, where you see dinosaurs for the first time, with the Brachiosaurus jumping up and eating from the tree. And that's probably one of my favorite moments in the movies, because that's that introduction to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. That's fair enough. Those are all great answers. I can't really fault anything there. Did you want to go next, DK?
Yeah. Favorite scene? I think it's pretty much what Tommy's just said with regards to the first time you see the Brachiosaur. It's just overwhelming. Favorite line? Yeah, you mentioned it earlier. I do use. I've got to say, I do use the life finds a way quite a lot. But I love the God creates dinosaurs, God destroys dinosaurs, God creates man, man destroys God, man creates dinosaurs, dinosaurs eat man, woman inherits the earth. I do like that one.
Great line.
Yeah.
Three-way little attack of that line as well.
Yeah, and favorite character? I mean, normally I automatically go for Goldblum in any film, just because he's a freaking legend.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
But I'm going to go with Alan Grant on this one. He gets a good character arc, and Sam Neill always classes up any production he's in. Big fan.
Awesome. I'll give you mine then. Favorite character, honestly, all of them. But this time around, John Hammond stuck out to me. Vean will be happy to hear. Just an outstanding performance, full of pathos and incredibly strong acting. So I had to pick Hammond, I think, in this instance. Although I could pick anyone at any given time, they're all great. My favorite moment is, of course, the T-Rex escaping and attacking the Explorer. A masterclass in suspense, tension, acting, special effects, direction, just iconic. And my favorite line, because I think it just cuts to the kind of core of the motifs that we're going for, is your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should. which again, just Ian Malcolm getting all the best lines. So there we go. So yeah, we're almost done, and all that remains is for us to give our conclusion, our score out of 5. So
did we just agree?
We did on several things, actually. That's why I was laughing as you gave your answers, because I was like, these are just basically the same answers as me.
Amazing. Okay.
Wonders will never cease. So resurrecting the dinosaurs is nothing on us agreeing. So yeah, we're going to go around and ask everyone's conclusion and score out of 5 stars. Again, I'll start with you, Vean, or Thomas, whichever one wants to go first.
Oh, 5 out of 5. I mean, 6 stars out of 5. I do have, my criticisms. Of course I do. And you know how I can be, but I will withhold them because overall, I mean, there is no other movie like this movie to this day. It's one I watch regularly. It is always a part of my rotation. I just think it holds up. Everything about it, the acting, the score, the effects, the directing, the story. It is just, I mean, I keep using the word iconic, but it is. It's iconic, and it's iconic for a reason. I mean, it's just a one-of-a-kind film, and I wish they had left well enough alone, because you can't recapture that kind of magic. It's like lightning in a bottle. It just can't be done. So stop trying. And I can't say enough good things about it.
Awesome. Go ahead then, Thomas. Did you have a conclusion and a score of 5?
5 out of 5 as well. You just can't top it. It's my top 10 of movies. It'll always be in that top, selection of movie. It won't fall. It's kind of like Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, probably the best Star Trek movie ever. Although she will disagree with me for some reason, but it's one of those movies you can just watch again and again and again, and it's just it's pretty much perfection in terms of a movie.
Yeah, fair enough. Can't say fairer than that once again. So, GK, did you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm saying it's kind of hard to believe this thing is now over 30 years old. To me, it still looks as fresh as the day I saw it. And a couple of minor things aside, I'm looking at you, Unix system. It hasn't aged a day. The premise is still a short step outside the realms of possibility, and the script not only runs with it, but delivers a brisk, fascinating, and action-packed 2 hours that flies by, no matter how many times you've seen it. The ensemble cast is filled with big names, and not one of them gives a less than stellar performance. Spielberg's direction marks this as one of his all-time greats, with good reason. And then there's the effects. Occasionally, they are starting to look a little rough around the edges, but it is very occasionally, with the majority of care gone into this, making this artistry here age much better than the majority of movies produced since. Backed up by one of the most unforgettable movie scores of John Williams' career. I've seen this more times than I can count, and it still has me on the edge of my seat while watching it. It's one of my favorites, and as close to perfection as a summer action blockbuster can be. And in the same way that Superman 78 made audiences believe a man could fly, this makes you believe dinosaurs once again walk the earth. I mean, let's be honest, it's impossible to give this less than 5 stars.
Oh, wow. Okay. Cool. Well, this is probably the shortest of any conclusion I've given, because I normally give a huge essay. So allow me to begin. I just said, what a film. Jurassic Park isn't just a blockbuster. It's my first love. No matter how many times I revisit it, it still gets me. There's something deeply emotional in the way it balances wonder and terror, science and spectacle. It touches my soul in a way few films ever have. I can still quote every line, probably in my sleep. The editing, cinematography, score, effects, direction, writing, performances, sheer movie magic. It's all an A+. To me, this isn't just a classic. It's a perfect movie, or at least as close as any film has ever come. Is there emotional bias in that statement? Absolutely. But if I could rate it higher than the highest score, believe me, I would. I also went 5 stars. So, yeah, I mean, it's complicated maths to do to work out this average when we've got 4 5 stars. But, oh no, I do believe that gives Jurassic Park a perfect score of 5 out of 5, which is no less than it deserves in my eyes, quite frankly. So, well done, Jurassic Park. I shall be applauding you for a long time, I think. So, yeah, well done. You guys have to be happy with that.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, folks, the electric fences are going back on. The tour jeeps are heading back to base, and the Raptors are... Wait, has anybody seen the Raptors? But before we escape this island with all limbs intact, let's thank the brilliant guests who braved the journey with us today. Firstly, for joining us with insights both elegant and razor sharp, no frog DNA needed. Lady Vean, thanks as ever for gracing us with your presence. Is there anywhere listeners can connect with you? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, on Blue Sky at Lady Vean, LadyVean. And my toxic trait is that I would go to Jurassic Park if it was real.
We all kind of would, wouldn't we? We keep going back to these movies and they're worse than some of the things that happen in the park. And anyway, finally, surviving his first trip through the park with 0 casualties and maximum charisma. Tommy, it's been a pleasure. Where can folks follow you or find more about what you do?
Absolutely enjoyed this. I can be found on Blue Sky and the Twitter at Labanick. That's Labanick. Yeah, this was fun. I'm glad I was able to do this.
I'm really glad you guys made it on as well, and I could talk about this film forever. Like I said, I'm absolutely in love with it and always will be. But yeah, and of course, I have to give my deepest thanks to my regular partner in podcasting, my fellow survivor. He might not have a flair or look as good as Jeff Goldblum with his shirt off, but he sure knows how to get a conversation stampeding. So my DK-osaurus himself, thank you for always keeping the wheels on the Jeep, buddy.
Anytime, mate. And, I look pretty good shirtless.
But do you have a Funko Pop of you as sexy DK? That's the question.
Yeah. Yet to appear.
And anyway, to you guys listening at home, on the go, or maybe clutching your armrest during the T-Rex breakout, we see you, we appreciate you, and we couldn't do this without you. If you enjoyed this trip into movie magic, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. For all our social links, bonus content, upcoming episodes, and more, you'll find everything you need in our link tree right there in the episode description, as I mentioned earlier. Stay tuned for a double whammy of movie magic with me and DK next week. First up, Tuesday's DK's Cult Classics takes us to a remote island for a martial arts tournament with added spy action. Then My Own Cinema Classics presents a Saturday matinee spreading from across the stars to Kansas to the big city as we open our copies of the Daily Planet and look up in the sky. But that's it for this edition of the Silver Screen Podcast. We came, we saw, we got very wet and mildly traumatized. Until next time, remember, life finds a way. Good night.
You have been listening to the Silver Screen Podcast, hosted by Mike Wilson and DK. Behind the Scenes section by DK. Additional material by Mike Wilson. Follow us on social media, our YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcasts. Link to all of these places can be found via the link tree listed in this episode's description. This podcast is a Media Matters original production, created, produced, and edited by Mike Wilson. We'd love it if you'd like, subscribe, and share us around like a beloved old video cassette. We hope to see you next time for more movie magic. Until then, remember, life moves pretty fast, so stop and watch a movie now and then.